Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Friday edition of FPC Radio Live. It is the last episode of 2023. That's right, New Year's Eve this weekend, and then, of course, New Year's Day next week. So, we're getting ready to close out yet another year here, and I'll tell you what, John, I'm going into 2024 with Flacco fever. Joe Flacco fever, John, because a couple years ago, you predicted the Browns going to the Super Bowl. I think you were a little bit premature on that because, hey, they have as good a shot at any right now going into this postseason in just a couple weeks. So it's going to be exciting to see. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before we get to that, though, we didn't get a chance to yesterday, but they released the 15 names for the finalists for the 2024 class of the Hall of Fame to be selected early 2024. We'll find that out as we get closer to the Super Bowl. But the names are as follows: Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Willie Anderson, Jari Evans, Dwight Freeney, Antonio Gates, Rodney Harrison, Devin Hester, Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, Julius Peppers, Fred Taylor, Reggie Wayne, Patrick Willis, and Darren Woodson. And, you know, the first thing that jumps out to me, John, is this is largely a collection of more modern players, 21st century players. You got a few holdovers from the 90s, Eric Allen, Willie Anderson, guys like that. But this is largely players that I feel like this is a young, very young list.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Willis only played 8 years, retired 5 years ago, so he's 35, 36. Mm-hmm. I believe he was in the same draft class as Gerard Mayo. So we're talking about relatively young guys. I remember when Calvin Johnson made it into the Hall of Fame, I'm like, man, he was drafted 8 years after Tom Brady was drafted. LaDainian Tomlinson, who had a long, distinguished career, obviously deserved to be in the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility, was actually drafted, a year after Tom Brady. So here we are. We've already brought Tom Brady into the conversation
and it wasn't even me.
It wasn't even me. Yeah, it wasn't even you. I'm doing my part. I'm looking for a raise, Ian. Yeah. So I just bring up Tom Brady without any hesitation.
Well, that's the key to my heart. You know that.
Just keep talking about Tom Brady, and I'll get the dough.
Well,
it is. I mean, these are all guys that we've seen play over the last 15, 20 years. I mean, Andre Johnson was drafted in 2003, 1 year after the Texans came into existence. So, it's a pretty good list. I think there's 2 slam dunks and then probably 6 or 7 guys that I feel are worthy of being Hall of Famers, but the way the voting system works, only 5 get in. So now you have to kind of cut corners and you have to look at what's coming out in the future. And, because oftentimes you won't see 2 players that play the same position get enshrined at the same time.
Yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of intricacies when it comes to how people vote or how people view it. So, some people might see one team has too many players in the Hall of Fame as it is, so they might look at them a little bit differently. There might be some prejudice towards right tackles versus left tackles. I'm looking at Willie Anderson. And again, I mean, all this talk about recently, Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, this, that, and the other. Antonio Gates was a pretty darn good tight end too, and he's at the top of many pass catching lists when it comes to accomplishments for tight ends. So, there's kind of a bit of a logjam at wide receiver. I mean, these guys, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, Andre Johnson. I mean, to be honest with you, Andre Johnson's probably, in my opinion, the best of those 3.
Me too.
I mean, what he did with who was throwing him the ball was pretty incredible, and it's unfortunate that he didn't, he didn't get a chance to really, really play with a really, really, really high end quarterback. But anyways, I'd be curious to see what you think of the slam dunks are.
The slam dunks to me are Julius Peppers and Antonio Gates. I think that they should pass with flying colors. I'm sure there'll be some voters that, will hold back a little bit. Julius Peppers to me was the closest thing I saw to Reggie White.
Right.
Now, this is an odd take to have on Julius Peppers. I think he was a great player. I think he also underachieved just a little bit because he wasn't quite Reggie White. But then again, I haven't seen anybody before or after who's been as great as Reggie White, but I think he's certainly a Hall of Famer. And Antonio Gates, there's a guy who just continually put up great numbers. He got to play with Phillip Rivers, a darn good quarterback, and but he was productive even late in his career. So
Yeah.
I think those are the two guys that should get in. I also think Patrick Willis belongs. He only played 8 years, but we can't hold lack of longevity against football players because it is a collision sport. And he made All-Pro 5 of his 8 years. That's pretty impressive. And I'm also right there with you on Andre Johnson because not only didn't he have the quarterback to throw to him, he didn't have the offensive line that allowed him to get open quickly, right? Like if you look at Reggie Wayne and Torrey Holt, they played in great offensive systems with Kurt Warner and Peyton Manning and good offensive line. So they had a much easier time like creating their legacy. Whereas here's Andre Johnson playing on a team without really a quarterback or an offensive line. So I think he's the fourth guy in. And my fifth guy, and I think there's probably 3 or 4 guys you could debate, who should be the fifth person. I'm going to go with Darren Woodson.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. Right now, Charles Haley's the only defensive player in the Hall of Fame from that group. I know Deion Sanders did play 1 year with Dallas, but that'd be like saying Darrelle Revis is a Patriot.
Yeah.
So Darren Woodson was outstanding. And again, kind of him and Rodney Harrison, and he just had more individual awards, more Pro Bowls, more All Pros, and he did win 3 Super Bowls where Harrison won 2. So I'd give I would give Woodson the final nod if I had a vote.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get any complaints from me. And again, I mean, like I said, I think you're going to see, again, there are a lot of players that played in their entire career was in the 21st century. You already brought it up, Andre Johnson, 2003. I mean, the guy came in the year after the Texans franchise came into existence. Right. You know what I mean? So he was right off the bat, on a team that, again, it's a new franchise. I mean, it's going to take some time to evolve. I mean, look at them now. They're still not like, they're still not quite there to that point. I'm sure they wanted to be, but at least right now it's looking positive with their young quarterback. So, one of the guys that we do the eye test podcast here on Full Press Coverage, and obviously it's very Hall of Fame centric. One of the guys that wasn't on this list that has been actually just a guest on the show just a couple of weeks ago, but also someone who has been been pushed quite a bit by our 2 hosts, Hines Ward. And he's a guy that you look at the numbers, they're impressive, but anyone who watched him play knows he did far more than just catch the ball. And to be a football player like Hines Ward was, and to do it at such a high level and have the success that he had, and John, the moments, like it's not like he just performed in the regular season and that was that. No, I mean the guy showed up each and every week. Postseason doesn't matter. He was there and he made big plays in the Super Bowl. It's unfortunate because I think the younger the room gets, so to speak, the more these debates are going to hinge more on numbers. And unfortunately, that's, to me, a disservice to a lot of these players, especially a guy like Hines Ward, who not only played a good portion of his career in not only a run-centric era of NFL offenses, but he played for the Steelers, John. I mean, they were more run-centric than like the most other run-centric team in the NFL for years. So, a guy that didn't necessarily play on a pass-friendly offense was asked to do pretty much everything you could ask of a wide receiver, and he did it at a high level consistently. It's a shame that Hines Ward can't get get his due because to be honest with you, I like Andre Johnson and all that, but I think he deserves to be right in that discussion as well when it comes to who should go in. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of really big name receivers coming up in the next few years that it's going to push him even further and further down the list.
Yeah, and you look at that, Andre Johnson, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, they all played in domes. Hines Ward played in Pittsburgh, inclement weather.
Yep.
Like, they always had like the worst field in the league. Must have been difficult to run routes playing on Heinz Field, kind of beat up turf. And again, he was asked to block, and I do believe he may be the best blocking wide receiver ever. That's kind of part of what you're contributing to the team, right? I mean, we always talk about Julian Edelman and Wes Welker with the Patriots. I don't think either one's a Hall of Famer, but they were both excellent blockers. That was part of what they had to do. And Hines Ward is probably the best ever at that. A Super Bowl MVP, two-time Super Bowl winner, a consummate team guy. Almost, you don't see this very often. Wasn't he kind of the heart and soul of that team?
Oh, yeah.
At the wide receiver position, usually we think of wide receivers as divas, and if they don't get the ball 15 times, they're complaining. He was kind of like the tough guy.
Well, it's a blue collar city, as they say. You know what I mean? Pittsburgh.
Perfect as a Steeler. Yeah, I mean, different than maybe Lynn Swann, who was in the Hall of Fame and played 20 years earlier. He was a ballerina out there on the football field. And John Stallworth was also great. But I do think Hines Ward belongs in there. And I'll be honest with you, if he was a finalist, I would have voted for him above Andre Johnson. But with the group that we had to look at, I would put Andre Johnson.
Right.
I think Clark and Aaron, you make great points about Hines Ward. Give him some love.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's unfortunate. This is coming from someone who watched a lot of Steelers because, well, they were often going up against the Patriots in big moments. Now, there weren't as many big moments against the Patriots, but then again, not too many teams had big moments against the Patriots, so I'm not going to hold that against them. So, but yeah, we'll find out the 5 names here leading up to the Super Bowl in a few weeks. They still got to do the final vote and everything like that. So, we will get that list soon. So, anyways. I let off the show talking about Flacco fever. Well, it's Flaccomania up in Cleveland, John, because it's incredible to watch this guy come in off the street. I mean, it's not surprising. It's almost playing into exactly. It's kind of great for me because it kind of helps with a lot of the things I've been talking about when it comes to poor quarterback. Like, I might add, John. And I haven't done any sort of official survey or anything like this, but I feel like we were the first show to really start talking about the deficiencies at the quarterback position at the beginning of the year. You know how that's kind of like
Do you have a lion in the studio, by the way? It sounds like there's a lion in the studio.
Well, they're literally.
I know you like cats, but that's a bit extreme.
Well, I do have some space for it. No, it's unfortunately they're cutting off a piece of my roof right now, so there is no possible way.
Cutting something else off that would have been much more dangerous.
Oh yeah, see, hear that? Yeah, that was rough.
Exactly.
So and there's absolutely no way that I can hide that noise going on right now. So you're just gonna have to bear with me here. But anyways, no, I think we were one of the first that I heard, to be honest with you, John, talk about how quarterback play is really down. I mean, we were talking about this in week 1, it felt like.
Yeah.
And then now that's all we hear about. That's the main talking point. So I think we're gonna give ourselves a little pat on the back. But and as much as I get called a lot of things on Twitter. Primarily by Chiefs fans. Yeah, I know it's unfortunate. They always tend to attack my job, me personally, my intelligence, and hey,
that's not
sticks and stones, John. Sticks and stones. It doesn't bother me.
That's right.
It actually just kind of makes me laugh. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it because I'm sick like that. But if they would take the blinders off, I'd like to think that the things I say are pretty benign, like I don't say anything like there are people out there that are trolls or people are going to say, oh, Mahomes sucks or this, that. I've never said that. And if I did, I challenge anyone out there to find, where I said that. And, I guarantee you're going to come up empty. But, going back to the Browns thing, it's not surprising, John, that a veteran is being dropped into a really good situation in Cleveland, good defense, nice offensive players, but a guy who, he's not Tom Brady, he's not Aaron Rodgers, but he's a very smart veteran quarterback. And it really puts into perspective where we're at right now when it comes to the state of quarterback play in this league, because, we talk so much about, not we, but just in general, it was like, oh, we're in the golden era of quarterback play. Look at all these great young quarterbacks. Look, I think at one point I was buying into that. Like, okay, you're getting a lot of young quarterbacks. I don't think they're going to be as good as Brady or Peyton Manning, but like, you're still getting a lot of good young quarterbacks. But the more we watch and the more we see, guys like, Trevor Lawrence, the next Peyton Manning has looked anything but. Jalen Hurts has had a down season, and now you're sitting there asking, well, what Jalen Hurts do we have? Is it the guy that played last year, looked like an MVP, or is it the guy that looks like a pretty decent quarterback whose numbers are a little skewed because I think he has 11 touchdowns from the 1 yard line? So is he producing? Well, technically yes, but I'm going to be more impressed with rushing touchdowns that aren't just on the 1 yard line, unless you're Tom Brady, because, well, that was impressive for him. I mean, it's all relative, John. So
that's as far as he could run.
Right, exactly. So, but anyways, no, you drop Joe Flacco into a situation where you need smart quarterback play. There's not enough smart quarterback play in this league right now. And watching Joe Flacco do what he's done since he's been in this, coming back and playing for the Browns, it's I mean, that's pretty much my case right there. I mean, and this is a guy who, John, if you were to go back, we talk about that, the real golden era where it's like, you had Brady, Manning, Rodgers, and Breeze all pretty much at their height at one point. That was, I mean, that's as good of a tier one at any given point than you could possibly get. And then you get to the second and third tier, and you're talking about the Ben Roethlisbergers and the Phillip Rivers, and then the Joe Flacco's, Eli Manning, and it's like, we don't have anything like that anymore. Like the way we were going, John, Tommy DeVito was a fringe tier 2 quarterback, and now he's on the bench. Poor guy. We saw that coming though. That was kind of a pretty.
He's frying up some cutlets.
Yeah. He should have trademarked that a lot sooner, because I feel like that might not have as much momentum moving forward anymore. But anyway, so again, what Flacco's doing is going in, playing smart quarterback, being a smart quarterback, and efficient. Read the defense. You don't have to do a bunch of athletic things. You don't have to run around and flail around and make it look cool. It's like, no. Play good quarterback. Be smart. Make the right decision. And you know what? Is he the best quarterback? No. But it's hard to argue he's playing pretty good. You put him in San Francisco, you think he's going to do what Brock Purdy's doing? Absolutely, because I think he's a smart veteran quarterback. Now, it doesn't mean that I think any quarterback can go in and do what Brock Purdy's doing, but you put in a smart veteran quarterback who's been around the block, who understands how to read and communicate to his offense. Well, yeah, absolutely. There you go. That's Joe Flacco right now. And look, for what it's worth, John, his career, you're not going to talk about as being one of the greatest of all time, but his playoff run where they won a Super Bowl in 2012, individually in a vacuum, one of the best individual runs for a quarterback in NFL history in the postseason.
In that postseason, 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, won 2 playoff games on the road, and obviously the neutral site in the Super Bowl. And he beat Peyton Manning in the divisional round. He beat Tom Brady in the conference championship game. And then they faced a really good San Francisco defense. And, he kind of lit them up. I mean, it was a miracle run, similar to somewhat what Eli Manning did in 2007, 2011. Just, good quarterback who just got hot for a month, and that's good enough to win a Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, the thing about Flacco, too, which is amazing to me, I think he's a guy who at 60 will still have his arm, right? Because he reminds me so much of Vinny Testaverde, right on down to being Italian-American and 6'6" or however tall Testaverde is. I bet if Vinny Testaverde walked onto a practice field today, he would still have as strong arm as he did 25 years ago. He's just one of those guys that just has a great arm. Like Nolan Ryan would probably go out and throw.
I just didn't Nolan Ryan just go out like, a few months back and just like
and
fire
like 90. Yeah, at 75 years old. Just certain guys. Like, do you remember when Dan Marino got enshrined in the Hall of Fame? Now, and it was only 5 years after his playing days ended, and he threw a pass at the Hall of Fame to someone, maybe Mark Duper. And it was like, oh my God, this guy could still certainly throw the ball.
I saw Tom Brady do that older than Dan Marino when he went into.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. When Brady gets in 5 years, I'm sure he can.
Well, no, I'm saying because 5 years.
But he was even older than Marino at that point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Marino went in at what, 42, 43?
Let's see, 38. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
42 years old. Yeah.
Tom Brady was winning a Super Bowl, and
although he was wearing a gold jacket though, which made it even more impressive.
That's true. But no, I agree.
That gold jacket.
Right, I agree. I mean, that's something that and again, this is the silliest thing, and that's being rehashed here lately. And it's about arm strength and everything. Like Dan Marino, I agree. Like he'd go out there and still probably throw as hard as. I mean, this is a guy who kind of like Favre. You hear stories about him throwing so hard it's like breaking your fingers. Look at oh God, I feel terrible because I'm completely blanking on the receiver's name from Miami.
That played with Mark Duper, Mark Clayton.
Clayton, thank you, Mark Clayton. I remember him talking once and talking about his fingers and some of the things that it's like, man, you get a ball that's thrown that hard. So,
the reason I always put Rodgers above those guys is he had the on talent thing. I think even more so than those guys had. He wasn't that guy though. He didn't throw fastballs all the time.
He was that again.
He had a different change of pace, right? Like he was like a pitcher.
Because
these guys at times felt like throwers.
Throwing hard isn't it like, and it's actually an interesting thing because I've been into it with talent. Like someone, the thing that's easy to say is like, and I'm not trying to knock Rodgers here because I think he's more talented, so to speak, than Patrick Mahomes. But people will sit there and use the line that, Brady's the most accomplished, but he's not the most talented. And I argue the exact opposite. I'm like, I think he is the most talented. And my reason being, and I asked this question yesterday on Twitter, what's more important to actual quarterback play than accuracy, the ability to move within a pocket? I worded this so much better on Twitter. I should have brought this up. I'm kind of butchering it right now.
Throw receivers open, I think, is a skill that not every quarterback has. I remember Dan Fouts was a guy who would throw a ball and you go, where's that thing going to? And next thing you know, the receiver's there. Like, that's an incredible skill to have, obviously, to put the whole package together.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's like, someone was taught, then some idiot was trying to talk about skills versus talent. And I'm just like, you really don't understand what you're talking about now.
Can I use this analogy? Okay, Steph Curry's the greatest shooter in the history of sport, in the history of basketball, without question. He's not, I wouldn't say close, but he's not in the discussion of being the greatest player of all time with LeBron and Bill Russell and Michael Jordan and Kareem. I think those are the four guys I always bring up as the four greatest players ever. Steph Curry's a better shooter than those guys. Heck, Kevin Durant's a better shooter than those guys, but doesn't mean that they're better than those other players because there's more to basketball than just shooting. And the same thing in football, right? There's more to quarterbacking than,
exactly.
Man, this guy has a great arm, he's accurate, all that stuff. There's a lot of other things that go into it.
Well, I found the tweet that I did, and I apologize once again for the noise because it's getting pretty loud over there. I said, what's more important?
Making a sequel to Saw? How many Saws have we had in the can already?
Yeah, I'm working on the next few. I got a lot of things going right now.
You do. You're multitasking over there.
What's more important to actually playing the quarterback position at a high level than accuracy, ability to read, diagnose defenses, arm strength, and pocket mobility?
Yeah, that's a good description. Yep.
I mean, and to me, that is quarterback play. I don't like. Yep. I don't care about running outside the pocket because, one, I don't think that's necessarily indicative of great quarterback play. Does it help players? Does it lead to certain things? Sure. I'm not saying it's not effective or it can't be used positively. But here's the thing, John. If you were better in the pocket, you didn't need to run. because
Right.
you run. Not only do you and people use out of structure as some sort of like buzzword to mean better, and to me that's foolish, because out of structure means, well, you're making things 10 times more difficult, not only on yourself but on the rest of your team. I mean, football is about structure. It's about timing. It's about, you know, doing things efficiently and doing it at a high level and stuff like that. And yes, you can make plays running around. And yes, there are sometimes it becomes necessary for certain players. If you're going to ask me, when it comes to listing traits that's important to a quarterback, that's at the very bottom of the list for me. And people are just abashed because they think talent. Whoa, oh my God, running around, arm angles. I don't care about arm angles, John. I don't like it. First of all, you don't get more points for throwing at a weird angle.
No,
you don't complete more passes because you throw it at a weird angle. Like, you know, that interception that we saw from Patrick Mahomes yesterday, the bad one, not the one that went off Tony's hands, wasn't his fault, but the flat, the one he was throwing to the outside. If you watch the replay, the guy completely bails on a clean pocket. If he were to sit there, he would have seen, I think it was Rashid Rice coming wide open in the middle of the field. But what he does is he rolls to the right, and for whatever reason, John, I don't know why, but his body's completely open, and he's throwing it like he's a second baseman fielding a ground ball to first base. You know, so he jumps up in the air trying to avoid like a slide, and he's completely open, and his 2 feet are off the ground for absolutely no reason.
Right.
And people will sit there and say, "Oh my God, look at all, look how cool that is, and look at that." And I'm like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about?" Like people like, what was Justin Watson doing? Well, what was Patrick Mahomes doing? The timing was terrible. The throw looked like it was just a floater, and you wonder why. Well, because he was out of structure and jumping off his feet for no apparent reason. And those are the things that drive me nuts when people say, "Oh, he's so much more talented." Like, no. Like, first of all, Aaron Rodgers is more talented than Patrick Mahomes, because Aaron Rodgers is far more accurate of a passer, as is Tom Brady. I mean, those are the two things that I think separate, especially Rodgers and Brady, apart, is deadly accuracy. Like, I don't think I've seen more consistently impossible tight window throws from any other quarterbacks but those two. And they both do it a little bit differently. Rodgers obviously has a little bit more flash, or at least perceived more flash. But the point is, these guys are hitting these spots that are very rare to throw. Those are the throws that I'm impressed with. Not like, when people say, "Oh, Mahomes makes throws that Brady could only dream of." I'm like, I don't. And then this is the funny part, John. And then I asked what throw, and they said, "Well, he's never going to run to his left and then turn and throw across the field to his right." Well, I'm like, yeah, because that's dumb quarterback play.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. Yeah.
Why would I be upset with that? I don't want to see him do that. And
you see Mac Jones try to do that? Or he's happy to do that? Yeah, this
unfortunately,
work well.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's like John Elway used to do it, and he kind of got away with it. But even then, he kind of ramped that back a little bit.
Right.
He was smart enough to realize this isn't the thing to do. I mean, at Stanford, he'd do that because he was playing with future judges and doctors and lawyers, so he had to kind of improvise as he went along.
Yeah, it's weird. But anyways, like I said, this is all to say that, yeah, I'm not terribly surprised that Joe Flacco, who's, this guy hasn't been retired for 5 years, but he's been kind of a journeyman type guy the last couple of years, just being dropped into a situation where, hell, we're seeing we're seeing a down year at the quarterback position, and hey, why not? Why not Joe? Why not Joe? So, anyways.
Say it ain't so, Joe. Can he win comeback player of the year with 6 starts? Because he's 4-1 right now. And say they win their final game of the season, 6 starts, 4 consecutive 300-yard games. I mean, I'm trying to think who's the leader as far as comeback player of the year.
Well, it's going to go to DeMar Hamlin. And,
yeah.
Like, I guess I understand, but, like,
yeah,
he has, like, 2 tackles this season, and he barely plays. Like,
he came back.
But like, I feel like Joe Flacco would be good. I mean, hell, you could even make an argument for Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield, yeah, he played really well. You know what? I know he just got benched yesterday. Russell Wilson had a
for a little bit,
what he had a year ago. So yeah, I mean, and sometimes what does the award mean? Like coming back from playing really poorly, coming back from an injury. Like did Gronkowski win it? No, Brady won it in 2009. Came back from an injury, and returned to being a great quarterback.
Well, I think it. I mean, it depends. It depends. I mean, I guess the circumstance. Sometimes it's a no-brainer. Like Teddy Bruschi in 2005 won it. Because he had the stroke right after the Super Bowl, and then he missed the first 6 weeks, which is incredible. I was actually at that game, that comeback game.
That was crazy.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Yeah. I was standing kind of by where the old lighthouse, or I mean, I guess the lighthouse is still over there, but kind of by that lighthouse where the players would congregate before they come out. And I remember looking down and seeing Brady was smacking him around, and you know what I mean, like typical Tom Brady kind of hype.
I don't know if you want to be hitting a guy.
Right. Well, again, I don't think they were thinking. I don't think they were really thinking about that part.
No, Brady is a psycho. I mean, he is that guy that the mild man. He is Superman, right? Clark Kent and all the.
Well, you remember the tunnel clip before Super Bowl 36 where he's like screaming like a child in front of Drew Bledsoe. Was like, Jesus, shut the hell up, kid.
Yeah. And Bledsoe was always kind of a chill guy.
Yeah.
His personality was different, so he was just like, okay.
Pipe
down a little bit, but no. Is there a more popular player than Bruschi based on his accomplishments? And look, he was a really good player. I scoff at when people say, "Oh, he should be a Pro Football Hall of Famer." I was like, no,
he's a red jacket. He's a red jacket guy.
He's a red jacket guy. But in terms of popularity, you can make a case based on like obviously Brady's the most popular Patriot, but he's also the greatest quarterback in the history of the sport. Bruschi was a really good player.
Oh, sure.
Right? I mean.
Well, I mean, he was that.
He's one of the most popular Patriots ever.
We talk about Hines Ward being that guy in a blue collar town. I mean, Teddy Bruschi. Exactly. I mean, the guy's last name is the perfect name for a beer nickname. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing resonates. And it was his name was Teddy, and he threw snow, and he had the unique one of the last people I remember seeing with like a neck brace, the backing for the back of the head and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not every linebacker uses it. Certainly not now, because it's not that type of game. I mean, that's if there's any proof of how the game has changed, just look at what the linebackers equipment is. I mean, remember back in the day where it's like you had the fullbacks and the linebackers with that neck pad, big bulky thing at the back of their necks.
Brian Cox had like a tiny board back there.
Yeah.
It felt like.
It's so funny, but
Bruschi was a throwback too, because he was a down lineman in college.
Yeah,
and then they moved him to inside linebacker. Yet another Italian American. We mentioned a bunch of Italian Americans.
I
Flacco to Marino, Tommy Cutlets. We have dominated the sport, and also we invented the two-team tees, which was a great thing.
Yeah, well, I understand you're trying to, the DeVito train is wound down.
Yeah, I gotta find another one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Is Joe Burrow part Italian? I'm trying to work on that.
Sure, why not?
I became a Kaepernick fan when I found out that he was half Italian, because he was adopted, so he was half.
Put together the all-Italian team.
Yeah,
how they were doing that with like the Rashad Mendenhall comments, where he was like, it should be talking about white guys or whatever.
I know exactly. Now, where does Patrick Mahomes fall? I mean, biracial. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, it gets very complicated. I think in this situation we refer to the precedent that was set, which was the racial draft on the Dave Chappelle show back in the day. One of the funniest skits you could possibly watch. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend going back and seeing that. But anyways, all right, let's we got some games to pick. Actually, we got quite a few games to pick, so we're gonna kind of fly through these. So we're gonna start in Dallas with another pretty big matchup. Dallas hosting Detroit. I'm going with the Lions, John. Going with the Lions. They again, I'm not. Both of these teams, I don't know if I'd put any money on either of them, but I believe in the Lions just a little bit more than the Cowboys right now. So give me Detroit on the road.
Dallas is so much different at home than they are on the road. And look, Detroit, been pretty good on the road. They haven't necessarily wavered from their high-powered offense on the road the way Dallas has. Dallas goes on the road and they can't get out of their own way. I think Dallas will win. You don't want to look at a 3-game losing streak with 1 game left before we get to the postseason. So I like Dallas in this one, but it should be entertaining and high scoring.
All right, Raiders at Indianapolis. The Raiders coming off their big win over the Chiefs, and I think they're going to add yet another one over a far lesser of a team in Indianapolis. I like the Raiders here. I mean, I think they should stick with Antonio Pierce moving forward. The quarterback question is a little bit different, but for now, I like the Raiders.
I like the Colts. They have a chance to win that division or be a wild card. The Raiders need some help to get into the playoffs, but these are 2 of the league's 14 teams that are either 7 or 8 or 8 and 7 going into week 17. That's pretty amazing. Talk about, parity in the NFL. But I'll go with Colts at home after a really poor performance last week in Atlanta. I think they'll get back on their winning ways.
Next, the Bears hosting Atlanta, and I got the Bears. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but they're actually playing some pretty decent football right now. So I like Chicago at home.
Yeah, I think Chicago is one of those teams that got off to a really poor start, but putting it together at the end of the year. Maybe not quite as dramatically as Detroit did last year, but maybe they found their quarterback in Justin Fields. And also, I think Matt Eberflus deserves another year as head coach. He seems to have that program headed in the right direction. And just stop changing coaches every 2 years, because it seems like the sexy thing to do. I like the Bears. Again, if the weather's not good, you take a dome team going outdoors in bad weather, and Chicago's playing good football. I like the Bears as well.
All right, Jacksonville hosting Carolina, and boy, did I want to pick the Carolina Panthers. I just couldn't. I mean, I'm down on Jacksonville, but even that, I don't think Carolina can win. You know how the Celtics had a interesting matchup last night against the Pistons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of how I feel about Carolina. Like they could like jump out to like a 10-point lead, and even the Jags, I think, would come back from that, and it just wouldn't be surprising. So yeah, I like Jacksonville in this game, but overall, no.
Yeah, they've lost 4 straight, right?
Yeah.
Just not playing really good football at this point. Trevor Lawrence is dealing with, shoulder, an ankle, a knee, a concussion. I mean, like at some point, sit him. He's your franchise quarterback. You're putting him out there in harm's way. Obviously, you can't protect him or he can't protect himself. They should win. But Carolina, give them credit. They went toe-to-toe with Green Bay last week. Green Bay still fighting for playoff spot. They won the week before against Atlanta. And again, they're not in a position to tank. And again, tanking really doesn't exist in the NFL because the players have to go out there and play.
Right.
Because they're all playing for their next contract. It's not like, baseball or basketball where these contracts are guaranteed. But, Carolina's been hanging in there. And really, they're not fighting for a draft pick because their first-round pick goes right to Chicago. So they've been hanging in there. But, yeah, Jacksonville, man, if they can't beat Carolina with a playoff spot on the line, then there's a lot of problems down in Jacksonville.
Stick a fork in them. New Orleans at Tampa Bay next game. I got the Bucs at home. I mean, again, they're going for their 5th straight win, which is incredible. The expectations I had for them were not this, but I think Baker Mayfield's put together a really nice season. I think the changes that they've made offensively are night and day. I mean, I saw a breakdown of kind of just play selection and stuff like that. I mean, you remember last year how much I was complaining about you have the best play action quarterback in the league and you use it the least. Like that never made sense last year because they were just lost on offense. They didn't have any sort of flow. Chris Godwin wasn't completely healthy. Mike Evans was good, but I mean, he's been great this season. I mean, their offensive philosophy has been different. And like I said, give credit where credit's due. Baker Mayfield's having a very good season, and that's why they're really starting to win these games. I like them at home against New Orleans and gets them one step closer to being that team that no one wants to play in the wild card round, John.
Right, because they'll be at home, right? They win the division. They'll host most likely Dallas, which would be a rematch of last year's wild card game where Dallas won handily. But this Tampa team is playing better defense than they played last year.
Oh, yeah.
And again,
turning the ball over
like
is a big thing.
They're much better, all around there. And again, the play calling, I mean, again, if you have Tom Brady, play action pass has to be a big part of your offense. Just like I, for years, screamed about the Green Bay Packers not using enough play action for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Again, both of those guys do a lot of things at a very high level, and play action pass is one of them. And use more of it. It frees up a lot, especially for your tight end. But yeah, I like Tampa in this game.
Well, and to that comment about the defense, I remember last year there was a stretch of I think like 7 or 8 weeks in a row that the Bucks did not create a turnover, and that streak was broken.
Wild.
Yeah, and then that's why people who are sitting there saying like, oh wow, this Tampa team is very different from last year, and it's not just the quarterback. That's why it kills me. I wish Tom would have just come back. Even with the Buccaneers this year, it would have been far better. But I think that streak with that interception streak ended on like a Hail Mary interception. So what you know what I mean? It wasn't even like it was just like, well, technically that's a turnover, so the streak is over. But it was incredible because like how do you go that long without creating a turnover? And even more noise now. Now I got sirens going off in the background. This just everything going on here. I'm gonna have to get like one of those underground bunkers where I can do the show where no noise will get in. But
don't do that in Florida, then all the suspicion will rise. Start putting bunkers in Florida. If you were in Massachusetts, you get away with it, but down there, that sends off a lot of red flags.
No, we'll see. We'll see. It depends on how much I want to get away from people. So, all right, next, Philadelphia hosting Arizona. Philadelphia is 1-3 in their last 4 games. Been struggling. I think they can beat Arizona. Philadelphia is a team that we brought it up a couple weeks ago. It's like we never imagined they were as close to that 20 or that 10-0 Steelers team from a few years ago. But maybe we should have been paying attention more and comparing them a little bit closer because they're starting to feel a little bit more like that. I don't think they're as. I think that Steelers team was very obviously not a great team. I think Philadelphia. It's tough, John, because I believe so much in them earlier in the year. It's hard for me to sit there and say, wow, they're really maybe just not as good as I thought they were. But I think they're going to win this week. I'd like to see them win pretty handily and do it pretty efficiently to kind of give me a little bit of confidence against a bad team. So I'll take Philadelphia, but we'll see.
Yeah, I like Philadelphia as well. They just haven't looked right all year, right? I mean, Hurts is leading all quarterbacks in turnovers. He's not playing like he did last year. The defense isn't as good as it was a year ago. A mess in the secondary. They're not putting the pressure on the quarterback they did last year, which may be tied into the secondary not being all that good. A lot more difficult to rush a quarterback when wide receivers are open 2 seconds into the play. But they should have enough to beat Arizona. And Arizona's another team. Again, they're right now on deck to have the second overall pick. Are they going to take a quarterback or not? If not, they'll trade the pick for someone who wants a quarterback. But they've been kind of hanging in there, right? They give teams a game, but Philadelphia should take care of business because the number 2 seed is right there for them.
Right.
They win their last 2 games, they'll be the number 2 seed, and they could be the number 1 seed if Detroit and San Francisco lose along the way, which could happen.
And look, Dallas is right there too. I mean, they can't, they can't just, coast into a division title. So, anyway, San Francisco at Washington, pretty big spread. I think San Francisco covers it. I know they're coming off a rough game against Baltimore, but this is a game that San Francisco will probably put up mid-30s and just kind of coast. So yeah, give me the 49ers.
Yeah, this is one of my best bets of the week. Not just them winning, obviously, is a 13.5-point favorite or whatever they are. They should win, but I think they're going to win by like 3 to 4 touchdowns. Like this could be a 38-13 game, something along those lines. When a team like that loses, kind of embarrassed. I know they're traveling east, but that's not as big a deal when you're just way more talented than the team you're playing. The 49ers should roll.
All right, Rams at the Giants. Another example of a team that not many teams are going to want to play in the Rams because they're starting to really come on here late. I like the Rams against who's quarterbacking the Giants now? Is it another Italian American?
I think Phil Simms.
Oh yeah, okay, right.
I think Tyrod Taylor actually, who
right.
Guys that just has made a nice living and playing on I think every team in the league at some point.
Pretty much.
Like he does a nice job when he goes in. He's like the quintessential backup.
Yeah,
perfect backup quarterback.
It's like Matt Castle.
Exactly. Just a guy that, and he's going to work well in the room with the younger quarterback. He's not going to, try to submarine him. When you put 2 young quarterbacks in the room together, like Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, it just doesn't work. They're both trying to establish themselves. You get that veteran who understands his role, like Tyrod Taylor and Jacoby Brissett. He can go in there for a game or two, but the Rams should be in good shape. They're playing excellent football right now. They are. You're right, Ian. This is the one team people are going to say, "Ooh, do we really have to face them in the postseason?"
I remember like the last 4 or 5 years of Matt Castle's career. Every time his name was brought up, I was shocked that he was still in. I just kept forgetting he was still in the league. It was like Matt Castle. I'm like, wait a minute, that's right, I forgot. But I like it. Matt's a good for Matt Castle. He had a nice career, and he's very happy with it. So
good analyst too.
Yeah, I think good guy.
Good at it.
Nothing. No complaints for me. I mean, the guy came in at a. Often he's kind of the punching bag. When it comes to the people always bring up 2008 to try to knock Brady, and I think he's just unfortunately becomes collateral damage. He just gets in the crossfire of this because people will say, oh, they still won 10 games. Well, no, Matt Castle was less than half the quarterback, literally, than Tom Brady was in 2007. And that's not it. Look,
in their sleep, they would have won 14 that year with Brady.
Oh, God,
in their sleep. That was an easy schedule, right? Because he was playing the NFC West and the AFC West, which were both dumpster fires that year. They lost games at home to the Jets, the Steelers.
They were, I think they were 2-4 against teams with winning records that year, which is something you just don't ever see with Brady. And again, it's like I don't, when it comes to having any sort of debate, I'm not gonna ever use any sort of hypotheticals. But when you're just sitting in your fan seat for a minute, you're like, thinking about what could have happened. Man, that 2008 season, that would have. I mean, first of all, Brady would have. You probably match what he did the year before. I mean, to me, there's no doubt that they produce at the same high level. And you think about the look at MVP in that year. Peyton Manning won with a very just not a great stat. You know what I mean? It just today you look at it, you're like, wow, that's kind of like okay, whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, that was a lost opportunity, unfortunately. But anyways, speaking of New England, they're heading to Buffalo. I think they'll play him pretty well for a little bit. But I think eventually this is going to get out of hand and Buffalo's going to cruise here. I don't think we're going to see a repeat of what happened earlier. Buffalo's playing better. They're in a better spot right now. And like I said, New England just doesn't have the offense. Bailey Zappi has moments, but he's certainly not the guy, not the answer. And we're going to see that on Sunday. So Buffalo.
Yeah, revenge game. Buffalo right now, if they can win this game, pretty much lock up a playoff spot and maybe potentially win the division. If the Dolphins lose to the Ravens this weekend and Buffalo goes into Miami and wins in the final game of the season, Buffalo could win the division, maybe be the number 2 seed in the conference, which would be quite an accomplishment. They were 5-5 at one point. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo should take care of business here. You never know with Josh Allen. He is prone to 2-3 interceptions, keeps both teams in it, but he's playing pretty good football right now. They're making it a little simpler for him, and I think that's going to bode well for the Bills going forward. I feel almost the same as I do about San Francisco beating up on Washington, although the Patriots have been more competitive than the Commanders recently, but Buffalo at home, they should roll.
All right, next, Tennessee at Houston. CJ Stroud has cleared concussion protocol, and by all accounts, I would imagine he's going to be out there. I still went with Tennessee just because I don't know how he's going to look, and quite frankly, I picked this game before I even knew he cleared concussion protocol. So I'm just going to stick with it. I'm gonna stick with the Titans.
I'll go with Houston. I mean, we seem to have agreed on pretty much every game so far.
Yeah.
So except for I think maybe the Lions and Cowboys, but yeah, I'll go with Houston here. They're at home. The only thing I worry about them is they're a young team, and sometimes young teams by the end of the year they're worn out a little bit because this is a longer season than they're used to playing, and Tennessee's a bit more of a veteran team. But I like Houston at home.
Miami at Baltimore, another big matchup for Baltimore, and I think they pass this test as well. Especially at home. If it was in Miami, maybe I give Miami the edge, but I like Baltimore in this spot.
The only thing I get concerned with, it seems like when teams play San Francisco the following week, they're kind of beat up a little bit because San Francisco is such a physical team. The only difference here is Baltimore's a physical team too. They're built kind of like San Francisco, big, strong around the lines of scrimmage. So I think they'll be just fine. Got to check the weather. Miami, not necessarily great in inclement weather with that finesse offense that they have. And they can run the football, though, but it's based more on speed than anything. But, yeah, I like Baltimore. I think they see that they're going to be the number one seed. I don't think they're going to let that slip through their grasp.
All right, next, Pittsburgh at Seattle, a rematch of Super Bowl 40? 40,
30,
right?
40, yep.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah, because Patriots-Eagles was 39, and this was the next one.
Yep. I like.
We can base all the Super Bowls based on Patriots Super Bowls during that stretch because it's like they played so many of them.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable actually. But Pittsburgh at Seattle. I like Pittsburgh here. I'll go with their defense and yeah, I'll just go with Pittsburgh.
I'll go with Seattle. I think Seattle, their offense can be explosive. It also can be very streaky, and Pittsburgh still has question marks at quarterback, although, Mason Rudolph had a nice game against the Bengals. Is he going to put two of those together? I'll go with Seattle at home. It's basically two similar teams, kind of still trying to poke into the playoffs. I'll go with the home team.
All right, Cincinnati at Kansas City. Unfortunately, no Joe Burrow, but, hey, Cincinnati's played okay without him. I don't think they're going to win this game, although again, this isn't Kansas City of last year or the last couple of years. I mean, anything can happen. I mean, they just lost to the Raiders, so I'll take Kansas City, but I might put that in pencil.
Yeah, I mean, normally the previous 5 years, you'd say, okay, they lost last week, they were terrible, they're home again. Doesn't it seem like Kansas City plays more home games than anyone?
Yeah, it feels like it.
It's just one of those things. Yeah, it's just always like they're home. But I like Kansas City in this game. I don't think Cincinnati's given up. Zach Taylor's done a nice job when you go from Burrow to a backup quarterback and you still, hang in there. You give a lot of credit to the coaching staff and also to the entire roster. But I think Kansas City, they need to win this game. They're going to win the division. I mean, one of the teams that's 2 games behind them already benched their quarterback for the year, so they should be in good shape to win the division. But they got to get something going before the playoffs.
I agree with you. But there is kind of a little bit of doubt because, if they lost out and the Raiders won, I mean, it's crazy to think, John. I get it. I know it's wild to even think about, but it could happen. I'd put it at a very, very slim chance, but it could happen.
Man, if that happens, hopefully Antonio Pierce gets the gig in Vegas.
Oh, he should have it. He should have it already.
Have it anyway.
He should have it anyway. But I told you what's going to happen is they're going to pass on him and going to hire Frank Reich or something like that. You know what I mean?
Frank Reich will have more paperwork to deal with. He'll be collecting checks from half the NFL.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's just the Raiders, though. It's exactly what they passed on Rich Bisaccia to go with Josh
another
McDaniels.
Italian. Yeah, another Italian.
So, anyways, Denver hosting
Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh could be the guy, and also half Italian. He just had the theme today.
He could, but that again, I think that would be a mistake because it's like, look, just go with what's working right now, and I think Antonio Pierce is a guy who, is really,
got those guys playing.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, what can you say? So, Denver hosting the Chargers. Russell Wilson benched. Denver going with Jarrett Stidham. I like the Chargers in this situation, but I get the feeling this is going to kind of be an ugly, sloppy game.
Is this the one game that we pick every week where we, predict a tie?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. You know what? It's going to be a tie. A tie is a tie.
That'd be perfect. Yeah, and that'll work out well for Kansas City.
So, yeah, works out well for them, sure. But anyways, Green Bay at Minnesota, last game of the week, last game of 2023. Actually, no, technically that is in 2024 because that's Monday Night Football. So, anyways.
No, Sunday night. There's no Monday night game.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. All right, yeah. So, here you go. Last game of 2023. I like Green Bay in this one. Little rivalry game. They still got a little bit to play for, so I'll take the Packers.
I'll go with the Packers. They're both kind of, 7-8. They need to win their last 2 games, both of these teams, and need some help. Isn't it amazing that 14 of the league's 32 teams are either 7-8 or 8-7? That just blows my mind.
It's amazing,
that's
but not surprising based on what we've seen and talked about all
right.
season. You know.
Yep.
And
A lot of mediocrity
again,
in the league.
What did Tom Brady say a couple of weeks ago, or about a month or so ago? And people, well, Alex Smith kind of took exception to that, but each and every week he's proven more and more right. So, anyways, all right, well, that's going to do it. Like I said, this is our last show of the 2023 calendar year. We will be back in 2024. So, hope everyone enjoys their New Year's weekend. I hope they have a great Saturday, great Sunday. Enjoy all the football games, and we will be back next week, next year, and all that fun stuff. So, thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you then.